My name is Daniel Hartwell, and I'm 34 years old. Until last Thursday, I believed grief was the worst thing a person could inherit after losing a parent. I was wrong. The call came at 9:12 a.m.
Not from family.
Not from my stepmother. From a stranger. "Mr. Hartwell," the man said carefully, "I'm calling from Lorne and Whitaker Auctions. We need to verify ownership of a collection of vintage wristwatches scheduled for sale this weekend." I remember staring at the wall, my coffee cooling in my hand. "What watches?" I asked. There was a pause. Then he read the list. My father's watches. Every single one. The Omega he wore every day for 30 years. The Patek Philippe he saved for and never insured. The military-issued Longines he carried back from Europe. They had been consigned, already catalogued, already photographed, by my stepmother. I thanked the man, hung up, and sat down slowly because my legs had forgotten how to work. My father had been dead for 6 months, and somehow in that time, the one thing he loved enough to protect had already been sold. And the worst part? She never called me first. My stepmother, Claire, married my father when I was 26. By then, I was already gone, working, living on my own, visiting when I could. She was polite in public, efficient in private, and always careful to call me Daniel instead of son. After my father died, she moved fast. Too fast. She handled the funeral. She handled the paperwork. She handled everything. I told myself that was grief, that people cope differently. I wanted to believe she was protecting what was left. But the watches were never just objects. They were the only inheritance my father ever talked about. He used to clean them on Sunday mornings, lining them up on a soft cloth like they were fragile memories. Each one had a story, a trip, a sacrifice, a moment he didn't want forgotten. "Promise me one thing," he'd said once, tightening the strap of his old Omega. "Don't let these end up in the wrong hands." I had promised. And now, 6 months later, they were being prepped for strangers with numbered paddles. Claire hadn't broken the law yet, but she had crossed a line she didn't even know existed. I didn't call Claire right away. That was my first advantage. Instead, I drove to my father's old house, the one that still smelled faintly of his aftershave and lemon polish. Claire had changed the curtains, replaced the photos, rearranged the furniture. But his study was untouched. Or at least she thought it was. The watch box was gone. The empty space on the shelf felt louder than any argument. I opened the filing cabinet my father had always kept locked. Claire never had the key. She never knew it existed. Inside were folders, neatly labeled in my father's careful handwriting. Insurance, taxes, correspondence, and one thin brown envelope. Inside it was a handwritten note, dated 3 years before he died. "The watches are Daniel's. Not to be sold. Not to be divided. Appraisal attached." My chest tightened. Beneath the note was a professional appraisal report, signed, stamped, and updated annually. The total value made my breath catch. 7 figures. My father hadn't just collected watches.
He'd documented them, protected them,
planned for this exact moment. Claire thought she was selling sentimental leftovers. She had no idea she was auctioning evidence. I called Claire that evening. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice light, almost cheerful. "Daniel, I was just about to call you."
a lie.
A practiced one. "I got a strange call today," I said evenly, "from an auction house." There was a pause. Just half a second too long.
"Oh," she said. "Yes.
"Your father's old watches. I didn't think you'd want the hassle. They were just sitting there." Just sitting there. "They weren't listed in the will," she continued quickly. "And as his wife, I'm responsible for liquidating unnecessary assets. The house needs upkeep. You understand." I looked at the appraisal report on my kitchen table. "I see," I said. "When is the auction?" "Saturday," she replied, relief creeping into her tone. She thought this was permission. "You're welcome to come, of course. Closure is important." Closure. I thanked her and hung up before she could say more. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I didn't mention the note, because Claire wasn't acting out of grief. She was acting out of certainty. And people who are certain make mistakes in public. The auction house was already busy when I arrived Saturday morning. Polished floors, soft lighting, people speaking in low, confident voices, the kind that assumed money would obey them. Glass cases lined the room, each one holding a piece of my father's life, tagged with lot numbers like price labels on memories. Claire stood near the front, immaculate as always. Black dress, pearl earrings. She looked composed, relieved even. To anyone watching, she was the grieving widow doing the sensible thing. She saw me and smiled. A tight, victorious smile. "I'm glad you came," she whispered. "It's better this way." He would have wanted them appreciated. I didn't respond. Instead, I took a seat in the back row and opened my folder. Inside were three things: the handwritten note, the certified appraisal report, and a quiet email confirmation from the auction house's legal department, time-stamped 12 minutes earlier. They had reviewed the documents. The sale had not been approved by the rightful owner.
Claire didn't know that yet.
The auctioneer stepped up to the podium and tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "before we proceed, there's a matter we must address." And for the first time since my father died, I felt completely calm. The room fell quiet. The auctioneer adjusted his glasses, glancing down at a document that clearly hadn't been part of his original script. His confident rhythm slowed. "Before we proceed," he said carefully, "a question has been raised regarding the ownership of the collection listed as lots 14 through 29. Claire's smile froze. She turned slightly, just enough to look at the auctioneer. "There must be some confusion," she said softly. "I'm the executor." The auctioneer nodded once. "That was our understanding, Mrs. Hartwell. Until this morning." A murmur rippled through the room. He continued, "We've been provided with documentation indicating that these items were appraised, catalogued, and assigned to a specific beneficiary prior to Mr. Hartwell's passing." Claire's eyes scanned the room, searching for reassurance.
They landed on me.
I didn't look away. "Until ownership is clarified," the auctioneer said, "the sale of these items is temporarily suspended." Suspended. The word hit the room like a dropped glass. Claire's composure cracked, not dramatically, but noticeably. Her fingers tightened around her clutch. Her voice, when she spoke again, had lost its polish. "This is ridiculous," she said. "Who would even challenge this?" The auctioneer turned his head slightly. "The beneficiary," he replied. "He's present." And every eye in the room turned toward me. I stood up slowly.
No ruse.
No drama. Just enough time for the room to understand that this wasn't an interruption. It was a correction. "My father was meticulous," I said, my voice carrying farther than I expected. "He documented everything, especially the things he cared about." I walked to the front and handed the folder to the auctioneer. He opened it, flipping carefully through the pages. The appraisal report, the serial numbers, the photographs, the handwritten note. His eyebrows lifted, just slightly, as he read. "These watches were appraised annually," I continued, "independently, insured under my name, stored under a private rider attached to my father's policy." Claire shook her head, laughing once, sharp and brittle. "This is absurd. Those are just papers. Sentimental scribbles." The auctioneer looked up. "They're notarized," he said, "and legally binding." The room was silent now. Not curious silence. Judgmental silence. "These items," he added, "were never part of the marital estate." Claire opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. For the first time, she wasn't the one explaining the story. She was the one being explained. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "For the record," he said, "I'll summarize the appraisal." He didn't rush. He read it the way professionals do, flat, factual, devastating. Item 1. Omega C Master, 1968, original movement. Appraised value, $120,000. A low murmur moved through the crowd. Item 2. Patek Philippe Calatrava, limited production. Appraised value, $450,000. Someone actually whispered, Jesus. Claire's face drained of color. Item 3. Longin's military-issued chronograph. Verified European service history. Appraised value. 200,000. He kept going. Rolex. Audemars Piguet. Jaeger LeCoultre. Each number landed like a small, controlled explosion. The total value crossed 7 figures before he even finished the page. Claire finally spoke, her voice sharp with panic. That's impossible. He never said. He didn't need to, the auctioneer replied. Ownership was already established. The room had changed. People weren't looking at the watches anymore. They were looking at Claire. And for the first time, everyone could see exactly why she'd tried to sell them. Claire's composure didn't shatter all at once. It peeled away. These numbers are inflated, she said, too loudly. He never used them. They just sat there. What kind of person lets that much money collect dust? There it was. Not grief. Not confusion. Resentment. They were my husband's, she snapped, turning toward me. And I was left with bills. The house. The taxes. Do you have any idea what it costs to maintain a life he promised me? The room went cold. The auctioneer closed the folder. Mrs. Hartwell, intent doesn't change ownership. And attempting to sell assets you do not legally own exposes you to serious liability. Liability. The word landed harder than any accusation. I suggest, he continued, you speak with counsel. Immediately. Claire looked around, searching for sympathy. She found none. Just quiet distance. Phones already out. Whispers already forming. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I said one sentence. He trusted me with what mattered. That was enough. The auction was cancelled. Not postponed. Cancelled. Within an hour, the watches were returned to secure storage, now under my name alone. Claire left through a side door, her heels silent against the polished floor, her posture rigid with the knowledge that something irreversible had happened. 2 weeks later, her lawyer contacted mine. The estate settlement was revised. The attempt to sell the collection was formally documented. And the word fraud appeared more than once in writing. There was no courtroom drama.
No shouting.
Just paper, signatures, and consequences. I had the watches moved to a private vault. Not to hide them, but to protect them the way my father had always intended. On Sunday mornings, I still take one out. I wind it. I listen to the steady, patient ticking. Time doesn't rush. It doesn't argue. It simply remembers who respected it. Claire lost the house 6 months later. I lost nothing. Because the quietest revenge isn't taking something back. It's proving it was never theirs to touch.